You probably went into music teaching thinking you were going to be teaching music. And that's probably the main reason you went into it, either the teaching side or the music side. But there's very few music teachers out there who go into it thinking, I want to run a small office admin department for a music studio. But if you ended up working for yourself, that's what you do. You have to be the administrative assistant to your studio, and you have to run all of these things. You have to do the invoicing, you have to write the emails, you have to do the schedule, all of that stuff, and it all adds up. So how do we make it more manageable? And how do we reconcile the fact that we're a creative person and that's what we wanted to be doing, and yet we're stuck here doing office work? Well, I want to take you back in time to when I was first starting teaching. I started teaching at age 16, so as you might imagine, it was a little bit messy. I charged a teensy extra fee to go to students' homes, so everyone asked me to come to their homes. So I was a travelling teacher for the first several years of my teaching journey, and I was not so organised. I charged each week. Let me know if that's you too right now or in the past. I charged each week at the lesson. I was paid in cash most of the time, and I had this tiny delivery charge. I definitely didn't have invoices or receipts or anything like that, and basically all of the management was inside my scattered 16-year-old head. I mean, for a 16-year-old, maybe quite organised, but really it wasn't organised enough, and I didn't realise it. That plus my text messages on probably at the time my Nokia 3310, oh yeah, were all that I had to keep my studio organised. Until I had a wake-up call. And I decided to take this whole teaching thing seriously many years after that. And that's when I started to bring things into line, to start doing term or monthly payments, to have an invoicing system that would let parents know when they owed me money, and to stop accepting random bits of cash from people. And you know what? The parents I had that were continuing with me and through those changes, they all said, oh, thank goodness. I hate looking for all these coins every week. So that's just one instance where actually it made it easier for everyone. But it takes that moment. It takes that minute where you have to say, no, this is my business now. So maybe for you, that's here today. Maybe it's been a hobby up to now. Maybe you are 16 and you're watching this, or maybe you're just a bit scattered with these kinds of things and you have to start taking it seriously. The reason we need to take this stuff seriously is because it affects everything else. Even if you think, oh my gosh, this is pure pain. I hate emailing everyone. I hate setting up invoices. I hate all this stuff. Why can't I just teach? Well, the truth is, every job has bits of it that people don't like. It can't all be roses. And if you don't deal with the admin stuff, even if it's not particularly palatable to you, if you don't deal with it, you can't teach effectively because it's stuck buzzing around your brain and you're not going to be able to focus on your teaching and your students and all the things you really wanted to be focused on. This stuff has to get dealt with. But it doesn't have to overwhelm you. The first step to making your admin make sense is to measure it. If you start measuring how long it takes you to do this and that and the other, it's going to change everything about how you organize your studio. If you have no idea how long these things take or how much they take, how much money, you can't improve those things. And you can't gain perspective on whether it's working or not. Sometimes we blow things out of proportion in our head. Sometimes we think things are much worse than they are, much less organized than they are. And sometimes it's quite the opposite. You think everything is running fine and actually it's a chaotic mess. If you start measuring these things, you can begin to improve them. I know this can be scary though. I know it can be like that closet that's so messy that you don't want to open it, because once you do, you have to acknowledge what it's actually like. But if you keep it closed, you're never going to get anywhere. So you need to start measuring how long these things take you and how much they take you. And that is going to allow you to justify spending money on tools or other people doing things. If you start measuring these things, you'll realize that you're paying yourself so little that it's making your teaching rate go into the floor, and that it's not an effective use of your time. You are a highly skilled person. If you got to the stage of being a music teacher, you spent years and years and years studying and practicing music. We have one of the biggest investments of time to get to the level of our profession. We actually do, and we don't treat ourselves like that. We are highly skilled people. We have a very specific set of skills, and we have put a huge investment into building those. So yes, you have to deal with the admin, but no, you don't have to do 100% of it. And if you start measuring these things, you'll start to find the spaces where you can do that. The next step to managing your studio admin is to get realistic. The biggest part of this for me, one of my, not a bugbear, but something I'm good at, let's say, that I see maybe other people aren't so good at, is estimating my own time. I'm not always perfect at it, but in general, I know how long things take me. Let me know if that's you, or if you're the other way, because I see this in a lot of the population. Not that I'm so special, but in this one area, I feel like I'm good at budgeting my own time. And I feel like a lot of people aren't. They have no idea how long they're spending on something, how long things will take them. They sit down to write an email or create invoices and they think it's going to take 15 minutes, and it doesn't. It takes 3 hours. Like literally those kinds of proportions. Here's the thing about getting realistic. It's not just about measuring it after the fact. That's important. But if you want to get really good at this, you need to get better at estimating your own time. And the best way to do that is before you start, write down the time you think this is going to take. And then after you're done, write down the time it did take. Now, you don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to look at yourself and admonish yourself and say, oh, I thought that was why did that take me so long? No, you have to take on the role of the observer and just say, right, I thought it was going to take 5 minutes. It took 50. Why is that? And how can I change that in future? Or not even how can I change it in future, just why is that? And leave it at that. And if you keep doing this with tasks, you will get better at managing your own time, at understanding how long things take. Because sometimes it's a case where it didn't need to take that long, and you were getting distracted, and you were doing other things. And that's one lesson. Sometimes it's a case where that task does take 50 minutes. That's just how long it takes. There is no getting out of it. And so you need to budget for that, rather than trying to say it only takes 5. Because that just leads to confusion for everyone and a difficult situation. Another thing you might need to get realistic about, sorry about this one, is what we call your effective hourly rate. Does anyone do this calculation? Let me know. Your effective hourly rate is the amount you actually make for all of the time you're working. As music teachers, we are so guilty of only counting our teaching time, or just sort of roughly counting the other admin time, but we don't calculate how much we really make, because we say, oh, well, I make this much per teaching hour, and that's great, even if it's $100 per teaching hour. If you make that, but you spend 60 hours a week doing admin, you don't make that anymore, right? If you make $100 per teaching hour, but you spend another hour working on the business side of your studio and the admin and all of that per student, per teaching hour, you only make $50 an hour. Maybe it's way less. And the reason I apologize for asking you to do this is many of us, when we do this, and believe me, this was my first experience with this calculation too, we discover that we're below minimum wage, or just like ridiculously low, way lower than we expected, right? But again, you have to open that closet. It's messy inside, yes, but it won't get tidy unless we look at it. So get real with yourself, calculate your effective hourly rate, work out what it is, and then you can try to improve it. But again, if you don't measure things, you can't make changes. And then from there, you can make small, incremental, tiny changes at a time. The next area of admin that I want you to look at is tools. But I want you to be careful here. So you probably need some tools, or you probably should be using some kind of tools, such as, say, My Music Staff, or Tanara, or Google Classroom. They don't have to be paid. Some of them will be free, some of them will be paid. But either way, there's an investment involved, because there's an investment of money, maybe, but definitely of time, no matter what tool you're talking about. And there's a real danger here that we start using tools and we use them unwisely. We just dive into it because we heard about it and it sounded cool, right? Good example of this right now for me is, or it could be, Google Lens. Who's seen Google Lens? Oh my gosh, that's cool. I want to play with it. But do I see a real use for it in my teaching or in my business right now? No. So I acknowledge myself that that's just for messing with, and it'll come back around to you if it becomes a useful tool or you think of a good use for it. But for the most part, we don't want to explore random tools. We want to have an issue that we're trying to solve and then go to work finding a tool for that issue. If your issue right now is that you're sending out manual invoices and you're manually signing up parents for group workshops, or you have a spreadsheet or a notebook with all your students' information and it's super disorganized, all of those things could be solved by My Music Staff. That would be worth paying for if you have one of those issues. But if you already have a different way of doing those things, it's not going to solve anything. You have to have a problem before you seek out a solution. It sounds so obvious, but I've done it the other way around and I'm sure you have too. We all love those shiny, magpie-like objects, but we need to be careful about how we use tools, right? They're not always going to save you time. And saving you time or money might not be the reason you want to use that tool. And that's fine too. It doesn't have to save you time or money. It might provide a better experience for your students or their parents, and that is fine too. But you have to know the purpose. You have to be wise about it. You have to be careful about why you're using these tools and why you're bringing them into your admin process. And remember, no matter what tool we're talking about, just one thing. Just do one thing at a time. Alright? Not every tool. Don't go grab My Music Staff and Tanara and Google Classroom and Google Lens just because I happen to say those 4 things. Pick out a tool for the problem you have, and if there is more than one tool that's going to solve that problem, do one at a time. Just do one thing. Okay? No matter whether we're talking about admin or teaching or anything else. My final tip when it comes to music studio admin is to reassess regularly. You have to have periodic check-ins where you look at your measurement of things, where you look at the tools you're using, where you look at your estimates of the time you're spending and your effective hourly rate, and you say, is this balanced? Because things fall out of balance. Even if it was perfect for you 6 months ago, it might not be now. Now, this has to be periodic, in my view. If you do this too regularly, you can totally obsess about it. So set an increment. Maybe it's the end of every term. Maybe it's the end of every year. Maybe it's Christmas and Easter. I don't know. But you pick periodic times when you sit down with everything that you're using, all the tools, all the administrative systems that you have for your school, and you decide what's working, what needs reassessing, what needs cutting from the budget, if you're paying for a tool, and what needs trimming down in terms of the time you're spending on it. Another thing to reassess during that time is whether you need to be doing that task. The latest episode of the podcast will definitely help you with that. It's all about outsourcing your music studio admin. So if you're interested in that, if you think it might be helpful for you, definitely check that one out. That's on the Vibrant Music Teacher podcast. That is a great option to look at if you have things on your list that you have to be done for your studio, but are not do not have to be done by you. If you're a bit of a recovering control freak, I get it. It's hard to let go of these things. And some things will need to be done by you. Let's be realistic. You need to write emails that are carefully thought out about your students' progress to their parents, or something like that. That should be you. That's a personal touch. That's important. You need to write that and be able to stand behind it. But do you need to copy things from a Google Sheet into Tonara when you're setting it up? No, you don't. Do you need to create individual invoices every month if that's how you're doing it? No, someone else could. And if you're still coming up against, I can't possibly hire someone, know that you could literally hire someone for 1 hour a week. You could hire someone for 1 hour one time, if that's what you're looking for, on a service called Upwork.com or similar services. You can literally go on there and get someone from near you, if that's important to you, or from far away. You can hire someone from India, from the Philippines, or from Ireland if you want. And the rates of pay vary throughout the world, not because we're being unfair to them, of course, but because the cost of living varies, right? So you might be able to hire someone to do that admin task for $5, $10. And if you're teaching your hourly teaching rate is $30, and it would have taken you an hour, you've just saved $25 or $20. Don't let these things block you from getting started. It honestly does not have to be a huge commitment of time. You don't have to sign any contracts with anyone. You can literally hire people by the hour these days, and it can make an enormous difference in terms of taking things off your plate that you shouldn't be doing in the first place. My last question for you on the admin front is this. And this is a question that's kind of in the zeitgeist right now, which is, what would this look like if it was easy? What is something right now that you feel you need to ask that question for? What would this look like if it were easy? If something is weighing on your mind, if it's stressing you, if it's just something you procrastinate over, ask yourself that question. What would it look like if it were easy? And then how can I make it so? How can I bring it into line with that?